Um, Everybody, introduce Michelle Hansen, Salesforce MVP. She's going to be she can do some introduction on herself too, but I'm going to hand it over to her. She's going to walk us through amazing presentation she's put together. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, hi everybody. I am so thrilled to be here. So thanks, Mike, for reaching out. Um, this is one of my favorite presentations to give because I get to nerd out about all the new fun flow stuff. And so this is going to be roughly what's new-ish. Some of it's been out for a little while yet, but want to be able to kind of show and tell because at least for me, until I figure out thing, it doesn't really click. So let me get my screen shared here and we're going to bounce between a presentation and then we've got some time. We're going to go ahead and do some show and tell in Flow itself. So, all right, thumbs up from anybody. Screen share is working. Cool. All right. Okay, so we're going to talk through what's newish. Little bit about me. I need to actually update this apparently. Still at Slalom, still work as a principal consultant. Now a five-time MVP. Have been awarded the Golden Hoodie, but more importantly to me, I am majorly involved in the ecosystem. I help plan Midwest Dreamin'. I coach Red Women Code. So for any women or non-binary identifying individuals who want to learn how to code, I support that program. I'm also a grad of both Part 1 and Part 2. So I started as an accidental admin and have at least gotten to the point where Code and I are on a not each other when passing basis as opposed to active hatred. Um, also love to present, share my knowledge. If I can teach somebody something easier than how I had to trip over learning it by myself, that's my ultimate goal in life, is to help people learn things faster than I did. So, all right, so some things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the transform element, which gets more and more fun as time goes by. We're going to look through the repeater. We're going to talk a little bit about custom error messages, which I absolutely love. We're going to dig through action buttons, and we're going to talk a little bit about automatically triggered screen actions as well. I'm going to have a conversation with you about Upsert on create records because I have opinions. In case you can't tell, they're not the greatest opinions. And as a bonus, as we're going through some of this, you'll see the reactivity that had come out in recent-ish releases. So totally want this to be interactive. So if you've got questions, come off mute, stop me. This is here for you to learn from. So if it's just me talking all the time, maybe you're learning, but if you've got questions, let's make sure we get those answered for you. So, all right, with that, we're going to dive on in. Okay, so the transform element. How many of you love loops? How many of you hate loops? How many of you are terrified of loops? Any of these things apply to you? Transform is the answer. So essentially, the transform element is something that allows you to transform your data from one format into some other format. So some of the things that we can do with it are maybe you want to get the amount of all closed one-ops for a given account. Normally, you would go through and you would query all your opportunities, and then you'd go through them one by one, and you'd take the amount field and you'd add it to a variable, and when we were done, we'd have it. That seems like a lot of work. We can do the same thing with a total count of contacts that are related to an account because neither one of these two things are master detail. So yes, if they're master detail, you can just do roll-up summaries, but when they're not, we need some other tools in the toolbox. The other thing that you can do is you can convert IDs from a record collection to a text collection, which also fuels the ability to do another lookup of records that are in a collection. And then you can also concatenate data from multiple fields together. So especially if you've got a system where you need to pass in a full name and Salesforce keeps your name and first name and last name as individual fields, you can concatenate that information together before you need to pass it along. So things that you can put into systems elsewhere or even other places in Salesforce. So here's a screenshot. We're actually going to hop in and look at this. in the org. So essentially, this is just a fairly quick opportunity. Then instead of having loops, what I can do is I can say, go get me all these opportunities, do a transform to find the sum, get these opportunities, do another transform to get the count, and then we just do one update record. So instead of having multiple gets, multiple loops, assignments, variables, this is now down to basically a 5-step flow. All right, so let me figure out where my org went. There we go. Oh, are we doing that thing where my internet gets slow because I'm presenting and you want to make me look bad? All right, if at first you can't click, refresh the page. I appreciate the laugh emojis. It makes me feel seen and a little validated. Thank you. Hey, there we go. Okay, so question in the chat. Dan asked, do you need separate gets for each condition? Technically, no. You could do a single get record and then you could use collection filters. Um, so that is an option that we could also do. So why don't we take a look at that as well? All right, so basically the way I had done this is I went and got all my closed won opportunities. Then I just used a transform to do the sum. So in this, come on, there we go. So in this, it just made it real easy because I had a collection that I wanted to use and I didn't have to do any more work to it before I did the transform. And honestly, given that I'm literally doing this on opportunities, I know my DML count is 3, which is well below the limit. So you have to understand that when I'm teaching concepts, we don't always follow best practice because I'm using a scenario to teach you concepts and not necessarily focusing on best practice. So yes, if you were doing this in a different way, multiple gets isn't always the best. But for this, it was really easy to say, hey, it's just this collection. So, okay, in your transform element, essentially what we do is we choose our source data. So what collection do I want to work with? And in this case, I want my query, my get closed won opportunities record query. So I grab that and I put it over here. And then it says, okay, the target data, where am I going to put it? And so now we have to build essentially an S object variable, even though we know the account that we actually want to update. We have to create kind of a shell or a placeholder as our target data. So I have created an account variable. So it's an S object or a record variable type. And so I've given it the shape of an account because we know all of these things. Now, the other thing that I have is I have a custom field, or actually 2 custom fields on here, one for the count of lost opportunities and one for the total amount of our won opportunities. So what I do is I connect it by clicking to map this field, won op total amount, with my collection. And so then what we do in here is this little aggregate button. If we click on it, it gives us the ability to build the formula on how we want this to work. And so in this case, it's not so much a formula as an aggregation. So what I can say is I want you to take every record in my source collection. I want you to sum the amount field, and then I want you to put it here. So instead of having to do a loop where I go through each one, save it to a variable, and then do the assignment, we can just very quickly come in here and do this aggregation. So does this make sense? Questions? Okay. So then essentially we do the same thing with our get closed lost opportunities where we hop in here and instead this time I have my lost op count field, and this time the aggregation is done on count. And since I'm counting records, it just basically assumes we're going to count like IDs or something, so we don't have to specify the field. And then I just tell it where I want that to be mapped. The nice thing about transform is it will tell you you're only allowed to map things to places that it actually matches the data type. So for example, account ID, is a text field and active is a pick list. Um, so in theory, it will not let me map those two fields because they don't match. The other thing is if I wanted to try and map, let's say, a date field to a currency field, it's not going to allow me to do that. It also has some very odd and interesting rules about collections to not collections. Um, but one of the other things that we can do with this is I can grab one more piece. So I'm going to add a second source data, and I'm going to come grab my record ID. And so it comes down here at the bottom underneath everything else. So I have all those same fields for my record ID, which is opportunity. And so what I can also do is, again, this is pretty much an empty account variable. So right now, the only thing in this account variable is my count of lost opportunities. So what I can do is I can actually come and I can map my account ID here, and I can map it to the ID field on this record. So I can have multiple source data collections or data items, because that's not a collection, to map into what I am transforming to. So this is something else that I actually used recently on a project. I had to create a number of payments. So essentially, based on how long a project was going, I need to be able to invoice them every 30 days. So it's length of project divided by 30 equals some number of payments. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 12. So I had to go through and I had to create all those payments. And until I got that done, I didn't necessarily have the total number of payments. So what I was able to do is at the end of that loop for creating all of the payments, because the payments were also different amounts. So I had to do that in a loop, couldn't just do a transform. What I wanted to do is I wanted to actually have payment one of. So I had a field for what is the payment number and then what is the payment of. So is it 1 of 12, 2 of 12, 3 of 12? And so after I had created the last payment record, I knew how many payment records I came up with. And so I was able to take and stamp that field on every record in my collection with a transform element. So that was a pretty cool use of it because I didn't have it in the loop. So at the end of the loop, when I had that number, then I didn't have to re-loop through everything and go stamp everything with the same thing. I could do it through a transform here. So then the last thing is we know what we have, we want to put on the account record. So then what we do is we find the account ID related to our triggering opportunity. And so this is before I added that second data field. So I just wanted to show you how to do this. And so on that, we want the lost op count, and we set it to the account variable from our transformation element. So it creates that variable for us as part of that transformation element. So this is my account from my closed lost opportunities. And so count closed lost opportunities is the name of my transform. And so then that's the variable it's going to, and it's looking to the lost op count field. So same thing with this one. Because we did this in two transforms, technically those are two variables. So to be able to update both at the same time, it was also just easier to do it this way. So then the one ops total amount, we grab that from the sum closed one ops transform account variable. And then we grab that field that we mapped to. So that's the key piece that kept tripping me up, is every time I wanted to do the transform, I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, you still have to go stamp and update the record with the values because that's not what you did in the transform element. So don't forget to make your update stick. So, all right, questions on transform. Okay. So we'll get back out of that flow and we will not save that. So then let's hop back over. So next up is the repeater component. How many of you here work with nonprofits? Anybody? Okay, we've got a couple. Have you ever had to add households? So you've got the head of household, and then you have a bunch of other people that also live there, kids, for example. Um, have any of you ever worked with, say, a veterinarian's office? How many of you have pets? So I have pets through no actual intention of my own. I have 5 cats. It did not start out being that way. It was not supposed to be that way, but that's where we're at. So when I moved with my 5 cats, I had to go to the vet and I had to give them the data for all of my little furballs. This is where the repeater comes in handy. It allows you to collect the same information multiple times, and you don't have to do the kind of crazy, I call it a fake loop, where it doesn't use a loop element, but you go to the screen, you grab everything, you do an assignment to put it into a variable, then you add that to a collection, then you clear out your variable and you go back to the screen again and say, okay, cool, add me another one. And you have to keep asking, do you have more? Do you have more? Um, Instead, the repeater component really gives us the ability to just do that natively within a screen without having to do all that complicated logic. So some of the things to use it for are, adding multiple, contacts to an account for nonprofits, adding multiple cats to your record at the vet's office. As I go through every year and I do my annual benefits enrollment, it always asks me about my dependents and so or my my beneficiaries, that's what they're called, on an insurance policy. So if I want to go in and I have to add the same thing every time, what's their name? What's their phone number? What's their social security number? What's their relationship to you? So those are some of the things that we can do here. And the beauty of this is it just becomes a screen component. And so then, unfortunately, to work with the contents of the repeater, we do have to use a loop. So let's hop back into here. And we are going to do a wizard to create an account and contacts. And so normally what we would have had to do is we probably would have wanted to do this all on separate screens. Is there a reason you're not opening? There we go. Evan, I'm blaming you just because I know you and you're on the call. So, all right. So before, what I would have done is I would have had an account. And then I would have created that, and then I would have had a contact screen, and then I would have been like, all right, let's do my contact values. Let's add that to a collection. And then I do a decision. Did they say they needed to add another one? Great, cool. Let's go back to that screen, have them fill it out again. And so that would have been a lot. But instead, what we're going to do is we're going to have a single screen. We're going to pull the account and contact information all on the same screen. Then we're going to create the account. Then we're going to go through and manage what was put into the repeater. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to set an individual contact's values, and then we're going to add it to a collection. And then we'll create all the contacts at the end. But the nice thing is we don't have to have that decision in that screen in the middle here. So, all right, I see a couple questions in chat. Is there a limit to how many transforms you can use in one flow? Always refer to Salesforce documentation, but I do not know of one. Granted, I have not probably used more than, I think 4 is the most I've put in one at this point. All right, so first things first, we're going to have a section for our account information. So basic stuff that I want to pull, I made the fields required. Give me their name, give me their street address, give me a website. Then for the contact information, what we do is we pull on the repeater component. So that's this first box here. And so we gave it a name. It does need an API name for the repeater. So I prefix all of my variables and my elements so I know exactly what I'm looking at. If you want to pre-populate this, so for example, if you already have contacts related to an account and you want to pre-populate them, you can configure a data source to display already. That's not our goal today, so we're going to leave that blank. But then inside the repeater box, we start pulling in fields. So for contact, I kept it simple. I just need a name and an email address. If I wanted to pull in additional fields, I could. So for example, if I wanted to pull in, another text field for title, or if I want to pull in a phone field so I can get their phone number, we could do that. So the key here is that it has this add button, which is how you add additional versions of the repeater or instances of the repeater. And then if you happen to add one that you don't need, the remove button allows you to take that away. Now, the only caveat with the repeater is you have a limit of 25. So it will allow you to put 25 in there. So I suppose technically if you wanted to add one for every letter of the alphabet, you would have to decide who is your least favorite letter. What is the least favorite letter? That's an interesting question to ponder. I'm curious what you think. What's your least favorite letter of the alphabet? All right. E. How on earth is E your least favorite letter of the alphabet, Michael? You can't even spell your name without two of them.
Yeah, I was just picking the most common letter to be a smartass.
All right. You will henceforth be known as Michael. I guess you can get away without the E. All right, fine. E can be your least favorite letter. We don't really need it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and debug this just so you can see what this looks like on screen. So I can put in our account information. So we're going to do the agents of Shield. And we're going to put them at 100 Main Street, New York. New York, 10023. Pretty sure all of this is not correct, so don't go map questing it. Besides, the agents of Shield should remain anonymous. We should all help them keep their secret. All right, so just in case, put a dot invalid on there. So now that I've created my account or put in my account information, now we can start adding our contacts. So obviously, oh yeah, it doesn't have the HTTP. There we go. So we're going to start with, Nick. We need him in here. So we'll do that. And then after that, I'm going to add Captain America. And then let's see, it's time for the Black Widow. And then let's do, oh gosh. We'll do the Incredible Hulk. All right, so I have added 1, 2, 3, 4 contacts, as well as the account. So now if I hit next, it's going to go through and we're able to kind of see what it does here in the debug, which is what I really like about this. So I have my screen information. We created our account. Then we started to loop through and we go through the repeater. So our first iteration, we start working through, and then we set the details for Nick Fury. And then we add that to a collection. So right now our collection is 1 contact. Then we go through again. This time we do Captain America. We add that to a collection. So if I were to come over to our org and look at our accounts, I can see my Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. account. And then under contacts, you can see all 4 of them were created. So especially in places where you need to add a lot of data that is repetitive, this saves a lot of time and makes it a lot nicer and easier for your user, and it's a lot less upkeep for you on the back end. So yeah, that's what we've got with the repeater. So a couple of things that I've come to learn about the repeater. While I love it, it is not perfect. So the only way to get to things that are in the repeater is through this loop and through a loop variable. You cannot do math or formulas using anything um, that is in the repeater. So, for example, one thing that I've done recently is I have asked people to add for those payments. Um, we're coming in later and we're actually tracking invoices. So every time you add an invoice to one of those records, I want you to give me the base details of the invoice and then I'll calculate the invoice total for you. I cannot do that in the repeater and show it on screen because I can't get to the repeater components as elements that are available to put into a formula. So there's a lot of limitations around things like that that I end up getting a little frustrated by. One of the other things is like I put in 4 contacts, but I had to go back and I had to count exactly how many contact boxes I put in because I didn't keep track while I was doing it. So when I'm asking someone to add in all of those payments or the invoices that go with them, if I'm entering 15, I got to keep track of that. And when I went through and I tested it, darn if I didn't do 16 when I meant to do 15 because I just couldn't actually keep track of it as I was going through and adding all the details. So being able to like number the repeaters and show that number is also something that isn't really available that I would love to see. So while I absolutely think it's great and it does a lot of good things, there are definitely still some limitations with the repeater. So anybody who wants to throw ideas out there, I see in the chat we're talking through some ideas. I will go upvote every single one of those. Let's make this thing bigger, better, and cooler. Um, so any questions on the repeater? All right. So we'll hop back in here. This one might be one of my favorites. Custom error messages. So, have you ever wanted to tell your users, hey, user, you did something stupid and that's why I'm not letting you do the next thing you're trying to do in the system? Um, yeah, I saw that. You laugh with me. It happens. Um, the problem that I have a lot of times is it's things that I need you to do in related objects or things that I need you to do somewhere else besides on the page that you're on. And it's really been difficult to be able to control that. So things like before you can close an opportunity, I need an opportunity contact role that tells me who my delivery contact is. Because if I don't know who I'm delivering to, this is going to go not well. So I want to stop you from closing an opportunity as one if I don't have an opportunity contact role in that spot. Well, I can't use a validation rule because the validation rule requires that to be on the opportunity object, which means now I'm building at least 2 automations to check for that opportunity contact role being created or edited, or a second one to check for it being deleted, so that I can then populate a field on opportunity somewhere that says I have that I can then use in my validation rule. I don't know about you, but that's complicated and it's a lot to keep straight. And it's a lot of automations that now I've got multiple things running around that I have to keep everything straight. So the custom error messages in Flow opens up a ton of flexibility because we can use this just like we do a validation rule, but we can use objects from all over the org. So if I want to check things that are technically not even related, I can do that. And also, it's a great way to tell the error why they can't do what they're trying to do. It does still have a 255 character limit, so I don't think you get any more with that than validation rules. But at least it's not just, oops, your automation broke. Sorry, excuse me. All right, so custom error messages. So essentially, we're going to start an opportunity. When we update it, I'm going to check for the OCRs. So I'm going to actually do a get records, which is something we couldn't do in a validation rule. Then based on the outcome of my get, I either let the save operation happen or I put in a custom error message that will actually pop up to display to the user. So then the custom error message you can configure and you can decide if it's just in a window on the record page or if it's an inline error on a field. So just like you can with validation rules, top of the page or next to a field. And then you can add the error message that you want to have here. Again, it is still tied down to that 255 character limit. All right, so let's hop back into what on earth are you doing to me? We're going to see if it likes it when I click on that flow. I have a feeling the answer is still no. Evan, what did you do?
Don't blame me, blame the gremlins.
There are absolutely gremlins somewhere in this org today. This is strange. It behaved last night when I asked it if it was up for another one. I'm like, come on, you ready to do another presentation? It's like, yeah, sure, let's open all of this. And today it's like, nah, really not. Well, they may have fed them after midnight, but please, whatever you do, don't get them wet. Okay, so essentially the way we're going to do this is on my opportunity, I check for an updated record and I want to make sure that the stage has been changed to close one. So the way I like to do this instead of just this radio button down here, I like to explicitly say I want the stage to be closed one and I want the stage to have been changed. So I don't care if you change anything else on here. I just care if you're changing the stage to closed one. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my opportunity contact records. So at this point, instead of asking for a specific one, I just wanted an OCR in general for the purposes of the demonstration. So all I did is say, hey, find me all the OCRs where the opportunity ID on the record is equal to the opportunity ID of the opportunity I'm trying to close. And I said, just give me everything. Because if I find everything, then I know if I have one or not. So then the question, did we find OCRs? Yes, I found them, which means that my get records collection is empty. So if it's empty, there's nothing in it, then no, I didn't find an OCR. If it is not empty, so this is actually the double negative, so is empty false. We found one. So that'll go down the yes path. Yep, sure, you've got one. You're fine to close the opportunity. If not, then we'll throw our custom error message. So anything I want to put in here, it is not really super exciting. I cannot do anything special like put in bold or formatting or anything like that. But you can, at least with the little emoji keyboard, um, you can throw those in. So we'll go ahead and we'll save this. Nope, there we go. And then this one's actually fun to watch. So we're going to go ahead and activate it. And we'll pull up an opportunity and watch this in action. There are opportunities in this org. I think this is going to be a you should refresh absolutely every page in the org. All right, so I can confirm I have no contact roles. I can confirm we are not currently in close one status. And I'm going to go change the stage from prospecting to close one. And we will get the nice friendly error message down here, complete with my little emoji. So that's about as exciting as you can make those. But that is how we can do custom error messages. You cannot do a text template, I don't think. It actually requires you to put that into your OCR. Where'd it go? There it is. But you know what? I'm all for having fun, so let's try it. All right, so we're just going to put something fun and weird in here. Let's change some colors while we're at it. How about a nice little blue? All right, so hey, you, yeah, you, no can do friend. Sorry. So we're going to do that. We'll throw our text template in here and let's see what happens.
You got to activate it, Michelle.
That's the other thing that I do so rarely is activate my flows. Gets me every time. Thank you. It's going to be really disappointing when it didn't work because I forgot to activate it. All right, so let's select our close stage to close one. Yeah, sad panda. It shows as plain text, so it pops in all of the HTML formatting. Sorry, Dan. Less fun. So, all right. Any questions on custom error messages? So it's honestly one of the things that I love the most. There are so many things that I have done, especially with the order of operations. Is anybody not familiar with the order of operations? Totally happy to go into like a 30-second explanation of it. Okay, so Jacqueline, for you and others, the order of operations, when you click save on a record, there is actually 20 things that happen in an order. So every time you click save, this is what happens. We load the original record, then we load the new record field values and we overwrite the old values, and then we perform validation checks. So this is where, like, if you have required fields on the page, it's going to check and make sure that you've filled all those out. It's going to make sure that you didn't put in a 5,000 character opportunity name, for example. So then it's going to start executing all your automations, and your and this is important to know. So record triggered flows that are configured to run before the record is saved runs at number 3. Before triggers is at number 4. So before save flows run before triggers. Say that 5 times fast. Then after we run those automations, we run duplicate rules. You know what we haven't talked about? I haven't talked about validation rules yet. Because we have to get all the way down to 11. Wait, no. Where is validation rules in here? There we go. Number 5 is custom validation rules. So one of the things that you can do is, if you want to trigger a validation rule, you can use a before save flow to do things that will trigger your validation rule. But instead of having to go through this crazy process, I just run it as a before save flow and pop the custom error message in there. And it's also something where if I want to, if I need to keep track of like what's happening because some things are happening here or there or otherwise, like I can put a custom error message into an after save flow. So if I want to make sure that I let some other automations run because they're going to set things that would otherwise trip a validation rule, but validation rules is 5, after triggers are 8, and then after save flows are all the way down here at 14. So if I want to make sure that it has time to run all of those other automations before I get to checking whether or not I really want to let this go through, I can throw it all the way back down here into the 14th step in the process. So it just opens up a lot of flexibility in terms of, like, when I say go, I need you to work, and then 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 you to work, but you might need to stop something if somebody before you didn't do their job. So it gives you a lot more flexibility than just validation rules, which pretty much only run up here in number 5. So, but yes, there is also another one of execution, Salesforce, then infographic. A friend of mine built this out and put it into a flowchart infographic, which is actually way easier to digest, at least for a lot of people. So if you read flows, read the flow chart. So I'll drop a link into this one as well. So, but this basically takes all those steps that we detailed out all the way down to 20 here, and put them into a flowchart format. So if it's easier for you to see that way, then you can kind of refer to both. But that is why I absolutely love custom error messages. I think they are great and super flexible. So, all right. Just about 10 minutes left. So, action button. Let's talk about the action button. This is probably one of my favorite things to do because you can actually trigger auto launch flows to run while you're on a screen without having to move more screens. I actually built out one of these for sponsorship sales for Midwest Raymond as a prototype. We haven't implemented it yet. But essentially, I took a process that would need to be about 12 screens and I put it down into roughly 2 screens, and that includes the confirmation screen. Because what I can do is I can pull a bunch of information onto the screen that I go query and then say, hey, based on what you've told me, what sponsorships meet your requirements? And then once you tell me what account we're talking to, let me go pull all the contacts. Which contact are you working with? So I'm able to pull all that information and display it on screen for my users instead of having to have them go through screen after screen after screen. And while there's more on the screen, it's that psychological factor of I don't have to click next 5 times, which feels incredibly long. I'm just filling out the forms on a page. And so this is just a 1-pager and it's super quick. So some things that we might want to do, you might want to retrieve child records from a given parent. So contacts or ops from account. If you want to check and see if a record already exists before you go ahead and submit it to be created, and you can let the user know so they can change things on screen before they go to submit it. You can even do like call outs. So if you want to build a call out to USPS and say, hey, I put an address on screen. Can you please verify that the address is a real one that exists in the world versus, 100 Main Street, New York, New York. So these are the cool things, but you can do it with an action button, which means you control when it executes. And that for me was kind of the big thing. So for example, we're going to do an update contact address. So let's hop back in here. So we're going to have an auto launched flow that may or may not open along with everything else on this page. Oh my goodness. Y'all, I have never in my life had Flow fight me as hard as it's fighting me today. I am shocked by this. I actually do not know if the USPS is free or publicly available. I have not played with that once personally. All right, let's try this again. Get contacts for selected account. There we go. It opened. And then we're going to open up the other one, which is to update the contact addresses. So we have an auto launched flow that is what happens when we click the button. And then that is what we are going to embed into the screen flow to update contacts. So let's go kind of in order, not of how we necessarily build them, but how we would use them. So I have a screen that I want to select the account and the contacts whose addresses I want to update. So first of all, I'm going to do a choice lookup to select my account. And then I'm going to populate that with the shipping address information from the account that I've selected. Then I can search for all of the contacts, and this is the action button. So when we set up the action button here, I give it a label, and then I tell it what flow I actually want it to run. And so it's going to run this auto launch flow called get contacts for the specified account. So all this does is I pass it in a variable called account ID. So that's where it has to be labeled as available for input. And then once I pass this in, I use it as a get records to go get all of the contacts that are related to that specific account ID. So it's pretty simple flow. I just need to put it in the subflow so I can trigger it based on that action button. So I want every contact where the account ID is equal to the variable that I pass in. And I want all the ones that are active. Don't care about the inactive ones. So bring me back all the records. Then I have to set this to an output variable. I can't just use the outcome of the get records because we're passing it back to our main flow. So main flows have to actually be set as variables. So everything that I retrieved goes to the CVAR retrieved contacts variable, which is checked as available for output. So the checkboxes for available for input and available for output allow you to pass things between flows. So between different flow definitions or screens. So that's how we get our information back. So once we get this back, I can start using what comes out of the return variable from that. So then I put in a data table. And so the source collection of my data table is actually from my action button called get related contacts. Then I go into the results and I grab that collection variable. And that's what I'm going to use to populate my contacts here. And so then from here, the user will select which contacts they want to update the address for. And we'll go from there with doing the actual grab them all and update them. Now, honestly, I probably could have done this with a transform instead of using a loop. But again, going for teaching specific scenarios, not necessarily best practices. All right, so let's debug this one. So I'm going to select an account so I can grab any of the accounts that are in my dev org. And if I remember correctly, I think Grand Hotels. Nope, you don't have an address. I thought it was S-Force, but I don't have that in that org. So who did I use? Well, we'll find one of them eventually that has something. And if it doesn't, then I can be like, all right, Edge, I'm going to put this at 101 Main Street. All right, so now that I put in Edge Communications, I can go search for contacts and it'll pull back the contacts that are related to that account. And so now I can see what their current addresses are. And I'm like, yeah, Rose, she's actually going to be at the new one in New York. So I want to update Rose's address. I'm gonna leave Sean alone. Sean's not moving out of Austin. So from here, I click next. And so then we'll be able to go in and it'll do all of those updates. So if I go in here and we're going to go find Edge. So now we can see that if I look at Rose's contact, her address got updated. So that's an easy way for you to be able to automatically update multiple records with the same information. But this is a level deeper in giving your users granularity to say, hey, only specific records I want to update, not just update every single contact. So, all right. So one of the other things that went into that is just the reactivity. So as you're building out your screen flows, virtually every component now has reactivity, meaning it will react to changes on the screen. So for example, as I changed the account, it was real time able to pull in what I was looking for. So, and I did this without actually needing to use an action button. So I did that with just a screen action that did it automatically. So that's the other option that you have. You can have things that pull automatically, basically, and then you can have some that are triggered by an actual action button where you control when it fires. So if I click on the screen itself, I can configure this screen action. And so for that, I have opened or I've created yet another flow, another auto launched flow that basically says when I make a selection in this field, what I want you to do is I want you to use that selection. And it's another very simple flow that just says, hey, go find that account record and pull me back all the shipping address fields. My goodness. Literally nothing I want to open will work today. So again, passing it in that account ID and I go get the selected account. So the account ID of the record matches in what I pass, and then I just set it back to that output variable. But on our screen here, Um, every time the screen loads, except when the user clicks the back button, it's going to rerun this. So that's one of the nice things that you can do with that. You can also say, only run it the first time, and then after they make that first selection, I don't ever want you to run it again. So there's some conditions that we can put in here as well. But there's a lot that you can do with the screen actions as well. And the thing is once you click into those things, you won't find that you have to click out of that and into just the screen properties is where you do the screen actions. It's not an element that you drag onto the screen. It's in the screen properties box. So, all right. So last, I think, but not least, upsert on create records. I really want to love this, but I'll be honest, I hate it. I think it's terrible, to be perfectly honest. So what you can do is instead of having to know ahead of time if you're creating a record or updating a record, you can use the create records element, and then you can just say, hey, if you find something that matches, go ahead and update it instead. The idea is this should streamline your flow configuration because it's one less choice you have to make. And it reduces errors of like creating duplicate records or things like that when you can update things that already exist. So if you can find an update in contact, then you can update that from something coming in from an external system instead of airing out with duplicate rules. Because even if you warn in your duplicate rules, that requires a user acknowledgement. So your flows, if they hit duplicate rules at all, just bomb. And again, if you're trying to create a new opportunity and you forgot that one exists, you can be like, hey, I found one that has a bunch of the same data. Let's just, update the one that exists instead of creating a new duplicate one. Or at least that's how you think it would work. But then here is the problem. When you go to do this create records and it says, all right, go ahead and create it from this contact, unless you can find me an existing record, and here's what I want you to use, you have 3 options, and that's it. So I could use the record ID, but that means I've queried for and found an existing record, at which point I already know I'm updating a record. So why would I be using the record ID to try and like not create it? External ID, if you're working with an external system, okay, cool. I can see this. Or if you're, doing something else, this might be slightly more useful. That's fine. Then you have standard fields. Boy, are they limited. On contact, I could get to about 3 fields, and one of them was email. And that was the only one that for me was even remotely useful at trying to identify a unique enough record to say, yep, this is the one that I want. Yes, Dan, it probably requires a key to make it useful. But essentially the challenge that I really had was just it was so limited. Like I couldn't even build out like a series of things. Like if an opportunity is in this stage with this thing with, this amount, like then that's a match. Like I would want way better like query type fields to be able to really figure out if this was a record I wanted to update. But essentially, what I could do is I could do something like this where I tried to create a new record, but because the email address was the same, it said, yep, okay, I am actually going to update this record because I found that field that matched. So it's a thing you can do. If you can get it to work for you, great. I am all in favor of people using things if it works, but just realize you might be tying yourself into knots. And at the end of the day, you're like, or I'll just go back to doing a creator update and it's fine. Truly. So, all right. Well, with that, I know we're at about time for the hour. So there is a QR code that you can grab some more resources, just like most of the help documentation for all of these different components. If you want my ridiculous flow naming convention, I think that's in there as well. But more than happy to answer any questions. I'm always happy to talk nerdy about flow. So if you want to drop me a line, have a conversation, I'm all for it. But thanks for letting me come and chat today.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. Does anyone have any questions for Michelle before we let her go?
Uh, I could ask a question, always. Uh,
Okay.
when you had the record collection variable that you um, mapped from the button, did you have to go and create that long thing, or was it able to find it? Uh,
Yep. So you can find it. I'll share and show. So Salesforce has gotten super awesome lately in that it just makes stuff for you. So let's just add a new data table on here so we can see it from scratch. So we'll add one to the bottom here. And so then my source collection, it says, all right, what do you want to use? And I want to go grab from my screen. I have a screen action called get contacts for specific account. So I want to go into that and then I want to get the results back from that. And then I want to grab that variable. So it's literally a click path to say the action button exists on this screen in my flow. Go to that action button, then go to the outputs, and there's only one, so it's easy to pick from. But you could have tons of results if you did 7 things in that subflow. Like I could get contacts, and then I could get opportunities, and I could go get 3 custom objects, and then I could go get price books for fun, and then I could send all of that back to you. So it really just kind of depends on what you want, but no, that's a straight click path to navigate you through it. You do not have to like know that.
awesome. I was really hoping that was the answer, but I wanted
Yeah.
wanted to see it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great presentation.
The other thing that's super interesting here is you also have to remember, like, I have collection variables that exist in this flow. These are not the ones we're looking for. Because it's really easy to be, oh, it's a record collection. Yeah, let me go there. And it's like, no, that's not the one. And that's honestly why I do a lot of things like name everything with my conventions, because I know like this is an auto launched flow and it's under this green action. So that is 100% where I'm trying to find that. Because it's way too easy for me to go, oh yeah, it's a collection variable. Click that one. It says contacts. That's what I want to put in the table is contacts. It's just not that one because right now it's empty. So, and I don't know that Salesforce is quite smart enough, but it's really getting close to be like, so that one's empty right now. Are you sure you want to use it? And it can do that with things like your get records and whatnot, but there's some other things like when you create variables like that, that it's a little bit less likely to be able to have that context and be like, are you sure that's what you wanted? You haven't gone there yet. All right. So recommendations for where to start learning flows. There are many. So it depends on how you learn best. Focus on Force, Udemy, Engen, Utkin, they all have flow courses, as do about 10 other people whose names I can't remember off the top of my head. Daryl Moon, Certified CRM, has one. Um, Absolutely all of those are options. And I think it's really important for you to figure out your learning style. If you can sit and watch videos and follow along and that's how you learn, great. Do any of those. If you need something that's written that you can follow along with, keep, refer back to, look up, make sure that whatever you pick kind of goes with that. Honestly, I have been teaching hands-on trainings at conferences for several years on this, and so I have beginner and intermediate flow hands-on training. I actually turned this presentation into a hands-on training as well. And I went a little overboard and went trailhead style with it. So like if I hand you the guide, it's basically step-by-step instructions like trailhead on how to do things. I am more than happy to share those. So if you want to reach out to me, I can share that information and you can work through that if that's how you learn and you want to do things on your own. Salesforce also teaches flow classes. So if you are independently wealthy, I'm not sure why you're doing this, but hey, if you're independently wealthy and you want to go take that class, or if you can convince your employer to pay for it, like Salesforce can also teach you flow. I do not know YouTube channels, but let's do Salesforce break, certified CRM, Udemy, maybe Floral site. I don't know that Focus on Force has it. So there's a list of places I know you can at least go get started. But if you Google Salesforce Flow, like beginner or something, it will come up with a host of options. Yes, I am also more than thrilled to have people reach out to me on LinkedIn. So let me drop that in the chat. Can I be your teacher? We can talk. So I am more than happy to chat with anybody who wants to do that, and we can figure it out. So mostly it's a timing and bandwidth kind of conversation. So, but yeah, also if you're not part of like Ohana Slack, I fully encourage you to join Ohana Slack. There is a flows channel there with amazing people, including Evan. Michael, are you in that channel?
Technically.
Technically. Yep.
It's one.
So there are tons of people that will be there that will help, that will answer your questions. And trust me, none of them are dumb questions. So if you feel stupid asking it, don't. Chances are someone else at the same point in their journey has a similar question. So be the brave one. Ask the question.
My one recommendation to everybody as far as that, and I totally agree with Michelle, it depends on your learning style, but there's no substitute, I think, to learning flows. It's just building them, right? I mean, obviously, you want to have a template and a framework to refer to in case you get stuck, so you're not just spinning your wheels. But sometimes, a slight little change in the use case is going to be a blocker on the way that you want to do it on the flow. So you hit those all the time. That's sort of the whack-a-mole game of Salesforce. It's like, oh, I could do this. I've done this a million times. Oh, but that won't work this time because of X. you know
Yep.
If you're in the ecosystem and you've got real orgs to do, create a sandbox and play to your heart's content and try to automate everything that you can. And if you're learning, spin up a dev org and fabricate scenarios. I mean, do it with your pets, your CD collection. People don't have CDs anymore, but you know what I mean. Whatever you've got, things that have lots of records or lots of relationships. Keep it simple. But for me, it's always been if you can tie it to something real in your life, not abstract of conceptual, it sticks better for me. Um, you know, that's the best way to go. And then you said jump on the Ohana Slack or come here into our whatever our success community group or our Slack channel and post questions, or there's plenty of places out there.
The other thing to think about is it doesn't really matter what automation tool you use. If you're using Flow, if you're using Apex, even back process builder and workflow rules in the day. The key piece that you have to figure out before you even touch the flow builder is what are the steps that I need to do for this process to happen? And very critically think about that like you're teaching a robot to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, because that is the thing where if I ask you to make me a sandwich, you all can probably do it. You're going to walk into the kitchen, you're going to open some cabinets, you're going to pull out some silverware, you're going to get me some bread, maybe some peanut butter and jelly. You're going to put them things together and you're going to hand me a sandwich. And you have made so many assumptions along the way. Like, you know that you should use a butter knife and not a machete. You know that the bread is kept in the pantry on the third shelf. You know that jelly is in the fridge and not in the cabinet. When you're working in Salesforce, in a flow, you need to make sure that you are telling it everything it needs to know. Get me this account. Okay. How do I know that account? What makes that account the right account? You can't just say get me an account. Or, if you're getting an account and then you want to get contacts, it's not get all contacts. It's get all contacts that are related to that account. So really think through those steps and be intentional and specific with it, because that is the thing, even more so than learning how to build on the canvas, that trips you up.
Mhm.
So just start with that. Like write it out. Like, step 1, do this, step 2, do that. A lot of times I'll just start fooling around on the flow canvas and I'll get halfway through and I'll be like, oh, I need that. I didn't get that. I should go get that up there before I need it. So I would probably be much better at building flows if I would actually plan my workout first. So
Yep. Excellent. I I've said the same things a million times. The analogy I always use is like how to go to the grocery store. There's so many assumptions you have to make. Where's the car keys? Which car are you taking? If you ask for directions, people usually say, "Well, you get on this big road." Okay, but you're on little tiny roads in your house. So how do you get to there? You can't skip those steps. You've got to be able to articulate them and tell them. And also, I've had this happen a million times with flow automation for in real world scenarios when I'm working with a junior consultant or someone less experienced. Well, what are you really trying to do? Why are we trying to do this? What's the real objective? A lot of times you'll get assigned a ticket or you get assigned some work and it's like, we want to do X. Okay, but why are we doing that? Because why are we doing it is going to dramatically inform how we do it and what we do and don't do and what the order is.
Yes, I have, as a consultant, that is the first thing I frequently ask, like, tell me why we're doing this. What are you trying to achieve? Because honestly, I think the 90s completely ruined us in this regard, because in the 90s, it was don't bring me problems, bring me solutions, right? So every single time someone comes to you and says, hey, I have a problem and this is what I want you to do about it. Well, in Salesforce, we have to actively train people out of that and say, bring me your problem. Let me figure out the best solution to it. And it's so backward of what everyone's been taught to do. And that's when I do wish I had a machete. Just kidding. So,
All right. Well, thank you very much, Michelle. That's awesome. I'm going to stop the recording now.